Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Guardians of the CLE Podcast. I am your host, Melanie Kirby, and with me here, as always, is my co-host, James Ellifritz. James, how we doing?
Mel, I'm doing fantastic. Another great off-season week, and we're excited to expand our conversations of Indians/Guardian baseball.
Yeah, we got a kind of a dry baseball news week. We did have Jose Abreu signing with the Houston Astros on a 3-year deal, so we just kind of got to wait and see what unfolds at the winter meetings next week. But in the meantime, we wanted to keep all the listeners engaged and tapped in through this kind of dry spell of the off season. So tonight here, we have a nice little surprise for you guys. And I'd like to welcome the director of several ESPN 30 for 30 films, including James, you too, one of our personal favorites, Believeland, which is streaming on ESPN Plus. And there's also now a documentary available to rent or buy on Apple TV or Amazon Prime called War on the Diamond, which actually is the story of Ray Chapman and kind of the history of the former Indians and Yankees rivalry. And with me here, I have Andy Billman. Andy, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome. And let me just add, it's really always good news when there's no news in November, because that means that no one's been, there's no Lindor trade. There's nothing that is scary. So sometimes it's good as Guardians fans that it's been a quiet November. Sometimes that's okay.
Just since you mentioned that, just as kind of like a general baseball question, I've seen a lot of talk how boring baseball's off season, how it kind of takes a while to really get going, unlike the other major sports who kind of have that really exciting frenzy of activity right when free agency starts. Do you think there's anything Major League Baseball could do to kind of drum up some interest in their off season?
Well, they're doing two things. The going away of the shift and the clock was needed. In studying sports, baseball is my favorite sport. It's a great sport. Baseball holds on to tradition, which we love. It sadly moves very slow. Look at the history of basketball. 3-point line, shot clocks, it gets adapted very quickly. Football, they'll adjust year to year very fast. Baseball does not. Baseball takes a long time. I think the lack of a shift will actually be very good for the sport. I actually like the idea, too, of clocks, how much we love Karinchak and his movements on the mound. It's time to move the game along, especially in spots that we kind of need it. I think the other thing about baseball, though, that actually is starting to come around again is baseball is the one sport where it's very facial, where you can feel like you can touch the fans. And when I say that, in basketball, you can see the faces, but you can also see the faces in baseball. In baseball, though, you can feel like you can touch the players. You're close to the crowd. In basketball, it's more of like a theater. In football, there's helmets and it's a big stadium, and that's what I like about it. So, Melanie, I think actually the biggest thing baseball can do is tell the stories, make it as entertaining as possible with these rules changes, which I think has been a little late. But I think the best thing that baseball can do that they need to push, it's affordable. You can touch the fans. You can still go to a Guardians game and take 2 or 3 friends for about $40 or $50. It's the only sport you can do that. And that's where it just needs to promote that more. I think that goes a long way. The one thing that the Guardians have done is they built that bar, the corner, which I think is very smart. I think those kind of things go a long way in sports. I know in baseball, we hate that kind of stuff, but it's actually important to have those things. So I actually think it's pushing more what they can do, but these 2 rule changes will go a long way.
I think that's the actual advantage to baseball, too, is that it gives you those fan-player relationships start in the minor leagues.
I agree.
Going to an Akron game, going to a Lake County game. Mel follows many of the minor leaguers as well, and just being able to, and spring training, that interaction at spring training as well.
I think that, and honestly, the one thing I would do, and if you don't like it, I apologize, promote gambling. As much gambling in game as possible. That is where the sport is going. Football does a great job of promoting in-game stuff. Soccer nationally There's studies have been done. More people bet, especially in the English Premier League, in game. Baseball should start doing that. How long will Bieber go? What will happen in the second inning? That kind of stuff's what gamblers love to do. Make it more gambler friendly. And I know people will be sour grapes on that. And if you are, I apologize. But that's what it's about now. People really like going to a game. The gambling rule passing in Cleveland will be a big change. I would promote as much in-game gambling as possible. People really like that stuff, and it makes it more interactive. And the one thing that baseball has, it's got a wonderful fantasy and rotisserie history. Promote that. Fantasy sports started with baseball. Promote it all the time.
Yes. Stratomatic baseball.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
And Andy, just kind of getting into it here. So you mentioned that you grew up in Elyria,
Yes.
right into Lorain County, west
right.
of Cleveland. Did you play sports growing up? And if so, who did you kind of idolize as an athlete?
Okay. Well, my dad was a salesman. So we lived in all sorts. It's funny when people go, I only lived in one house. I'm like, I lived in like 8 different houses. So we were like traveling around a lot as a kid. But I loved, I idolized as a kid. Okay. So I always wanted to be Mark Price. Because I was an 80s kid, I grew up wanting to be Brooke
Me too.
Jacoby. Yeah, Brooke Jacoby was a cool guy. He's like the only guy that made the All-Star team in the 80s as an Indians fan. So that was kind of like my other guy. I always, you know what, honestly, like Webster Slaughter, because he did a cool dance. I apologize. I'm in a car. Let me turn on my light. I went dark for a second. Obviously, I got intimidated by your tough questions. Here we go. Sorry. So anyways, I idolize those kind of players. But honestly, and this is goofy to say, I just idolize the teams. Like my birthday's in August, so I always have my birthday at Municipal, and there'd be like 6,000-7,000 people there. But just having girls come up to me saying happy birthday and being in an Indians game, even when we're getting the shit kicked out of us by 11:02, it's like, yeah, it was kind of fun. That was kind of nice. And, I got to see Bob Welch, and boy, that Mark McGuire is very good. And you just kind of leave. But like, I played basketball. My dad is from Indiana, so I'm a big Purdue fan. So I love Purdue basketball, and I love basketball. So even though I was surprised when I learned you can't be 5'6" and play basketball professionally. So I decided okay, that's not my career. Yeah. Right. Melanie. So you understand. And I actually played a lot of soccer growing up, but I was one of those kids. I was very lucky. I knew in 8th grade, I wanted to be in sports television. So I kind of stopped playing sports, and I did a paper route. I did worked at Bob Evans, and I did sports television. That was it. I did anything I could do with sports television. And I was one of those guys who would watch everything from Browns Oilers to, Georgia Auburn. I just watched anything. I just loved watching sports. I'm a sports junkie. So I love playing sports. But what's my best sport to play? Poker. I'm very, very good at poker. Is there if there's any athletic competition, I'm like, oh no, let the professionals do their thing. I can't. I'm really not very good at sports.
I bet the Guardians front office is pretty good at poker too, based on the trades we make.
Oh my gosh.
I could only imagine.
Seriously. And by the way, we love dealing with the Padres. We always like a good Padres trade. Don't make a trade with the Devil Rays, though. That doesn't go so well. Mr. Bowers at first base didn't work out. Boy, I'd love to have Yandy Diaz still playing for the Guardians.
Maybe
but
a good one.
Oh my gosh. But no, they usually make very, very good trades. In fact, we were just talking about this today. You forget the Andrew Miller trade really accelerated 2016. I will never forget when I read that. I was just finishing up Believeland. And I just remember watching that trade go down. I'm like, that is such a game changer. And he was such a fun trade. Anyways, we're going off topic.
And Clint Frazier wasn't anything for them.
No.
I knew people were mad that we gave up Clint Frazier. He was a top outfield prospect at the time.
No.
Hug the prospects on the way out the door.
Yes.
You're in win now mode. Go win.
Yeah. The Guardians make great trades. The Cavs are 50-50. And then there's those other Browns people, which I love the Browns, but they don't. But the Guardians usually hit 9 out of 10. And not only 9 out of 10, they really hit it. I was so down when they traded Carrasco and Lindor. But look at Jimenez. Oh, Carrasco hurt. But look at Jimenez. look at Rosario, and I call him Super Rosario. Super Rosario is so good, and and just another side note, the relationship that Rosario and J-Ram built was so cool to watch develop during the season.
Yeah.
And they brought in Oscar, and that's the difference. I just love that. It's third layer stuff. It isn't just analytics. They really think third layer, and oh my gosh. So yes, I would lose my wallet to the Guardians front staff, I'm sure. But I'd be happy to play with them at any time. Challenge.
Sure. You mentioned finishing up Believeland for ESPN 30 for 30 in 2016. I've seen both versions, and so the last version obviously being the best, winning the championship. Sure. What was the time gap in between you finishing the original version and
a month and a half?
Okay.
A month and a half. Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow.
In fact, there's a guy who was following me and doing a journal on me in the Toledo Blade, and he called me after Game 4 and he goes, "How do you feel about what's going on?" I go, "The Warriors better not let Cavs win Game 5 because they're gonna win Game 6. There's no way LeBron's gonna let them lose in Game 6." And thank God I was right. But yeah, as a director of a film like that, I was so lucky that the Cavs won. It was so hot in that goddamn bar. And I remember I was saying, it's like, and Scott Rabb, who's in the film, kept telling me, goes, "What are they going to happen if they lose?" I'm like, "We're not going to talk about that. They have to win this game." And thank God they did. It just changed everything. And my latest film, War in the Diamond, honestly, we probably would have touched up a little bit more if the Yankees would have lost to the Guardians, which was what was supposed to happen. The Yankees are just annoying, had to win again. But it was a month and a half, and it was strange and quick, but strange in a good way because it was such a fun film, and I directed it, so I have a very different perspective than others. But it was a life-changing experience, to say the least.
Well, it definitely is for me. I mean, there's many women out there that have The Notebook, and that's their movie, and they cry every time I watch Believeland. And I kid you not, I was watching it again last night. Wanted to touch up on it again, and seeing Scott and his son, and obviously yourself. Now you're saying you were also at the Wild Eagle Saloon, is that correct?
Oh, I was the director. I was right there. Yeah,
so you were right there.
Yeah.
That experience. I mean, how do you
out of body? Yeah. It was like, I mean, in the beginning of the fourth quarter, the Cavs were losing. So you're like, "Oh shit, this is not. What are we gonna do?" And just for it to change the way it did was just is remarkable. I will just not forget how surreal it was, because we made an announcement that we're going to be there. You just never know how many. The bar was packed. It was just so filled, and it was just such a reaction. But what was more, the parade was just crazy, and I became very close with Ernest Biner, and just those kind of things you just can never get back. Biner's such a good man. I'm just happy for him. Forgetting what happened to me, I'm just happy that Biner's got redemption and feels like he can come back to Cleveland anytime. That just means a lot to me.
I can't say enough about the film because of how I feel at the end. And, you take us on the journey all the way through drive and fumble and the shot. And I was at the game before the drive versus the Jets with my father. Many people leaving the game down 10, 5 minutes to go. We stuck around that game, and that's the game that changed me as a Cleveland fan as a young kid, was to be there and be a part of that. And then be downtown for Game 6 of the 2016 NBA Finals. I'm getting chills right now, even just thinking about it, because it'll never go away. I go back to the videos, I go back to the pictures, I go back to your film, and it brings me that energy that I need and that refocus after watching the film.
Well, you're very kind to say that. That film meant the world to me, and I hope people like War in the Diamond similarly to what Believeland was. But yeah, Believeland just changed my life. It was I'm 43 years old. That was my life. That was my life as a Cleveland fan.
And I saw Scott was the producer, and in there with his son. How did you determine Scott's story and storytelling to represent all of us fans, because he was so many of us during those conversations. There's so many of us that could relate to exactly what he's saying.
When I talked to Scott, we just kind of knew. I don't know how else to say it. Like I had dad and brothers, and my mom's a huge fan. And that's just what we did. We would go out to dinner before games. We'd sit around and just talk sports. That's what we did. That's what I do now. Like, I don't even know what my dad's doing today. But I could call him and be like, hey, that was a crappy loss to the Raptors. I'm like, yeah, it was annoying. Like, yeah, I'm really worried about Love's thumb. Yeah, so am I. Just things like that. And those are the things that, like, brought me together. And I'm not saying it's good, because we should be brought together through harmonizing or through, like, social movements or through, like, but truthfully, as a Clevelander, I was always brought back to sports. Yeah. It always came back to sports. And I don't know how else to say it. I'm about ready to get remarried. And my brothers and I were texting. Why? Because we were so excited about the Browns victory over the Buccaneers. like, what was my first comment? Hey, if you get Cavs tickets, you got to tell me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I apologize. I didn't even give them the details for the wedding, because it's all about the sports. I mean, that's just what it's about. Like, my dad came up to Connecticut, and what was the first thing we were talking about? Man, I'm really worried about what they're going to do. Are they going to start Savali in Game 5? Like, I don't know. Like, that's kind of risky. Like, that's always what was talked about. How are the kids? Oh, they're fine. One's flunking, one got kicked out. But Savali is concerned. I'm very, very concerned about Aaron Savali. That's what it always seems to come back to.
So basically, Andy, what you're saying, there is no Cleveland off season for you.
No, what? No.
There's no Cleveland off season.
What? No.
I relate to that so much, because honestly, I was born in 91, so like real low end of the 90s. And my very first like vivid Cleveland sports memory was Game 7 of the 97 World Series. Watching my parents go absolutely nuts when Mesa blew that save.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm watching, Renteria fly around the bases, and I'm like, what's happening to my family? Like, why are they mad at each other? And I saw the heartbreak right there. And I wonder, fast forward to 2016, I got to see a Cleveland championship in my lifetime. And it's like, I wonder why I watch YouTube clips of that final minute, right?
Sure.
The block, the shot, all that. And I get tears. I cry, because it was like the best minute 30 of basketball I've ever seen in my life. And it takes me back to, that is how my family communicates, is through sports. And my fiance right now wasn't raised like that. So she sees us go nuts watching Cleveland sporting events. She's like, why do you guys do this to yourself? This is insane. And to us, we're like, this is our love language in our family.
Yes. Why are you, as everybody's so angry? Oh, Cameron, the Browns just lost against Ryan. But at the same time, when SpongeBob hit that home run, oh my gosh, it's like, who wants to go out to dinner? Oh my God, yeah, let's go. Woo! Did you pay that oil bill? Who gives a fuck? Go Guardians!
Right. Everything stops.
Oh, everything is like Heartline. Like, I mean, she has seen it firsthand, because just a quick story for this year. When the Guardians got swept by Seattle at home, I was in such a bad mood. She goes, you gotta like cheer up. I'm like, fuck the Mariners, fuck Nintendo, fuck Seattle, it's fucking stupid town. I got so like grumpy. It's just like, God, and everybody, why can't they? Why? That's just what we do. I don't know how to say it.
We just know heartbreak. Then it makes the good times a million times better.
And that's why when SpongeBob hit the home run, when Naylor hit the home run in Chicago, that kind of stuff, it's like, yeah, boy, that's why we do this. And that's why the Guardians this year were so much fun. And hopefully that's why people will watch War in the Diamond. We do touch on the good moments in the 1920 World Series in 48. And for people who want to see the successful moments, there's a lot in this film. And ironically, the Indians and Guardians have most of their successful moments when the Yankees are also very good. And that's kind of the heart of the film, along the Ray Chapman story. So yes, to put my plug in about the film. So yes, it is a we are a city, Melanie, and to your wonderful, beautiful fiance, just tell her sip some wine. It will come. It is a sickness, and yes, when it rains, it pours, and when the sun is shining, it is motherfucking shining. And we are all ready to buy lottery tickets when they win. So yes, that's how it rolls.
Well, Andy, I want to touch on War on a Diamond. First of all, we're having this conversation because, and I want to give credit to your producers, especially Danielle Abarico and then Pam Sullivan. Danielle was very gracious as far as helping connect us for this interview. And I wanted to talk to you. She had mentioned that it was her and Pam that brought the Ray Chapman story or helped bring that story to your attention as far as making it into a film.
Correct.
Could you kind of dive into that and how that became something that you wanted to put your time and effort into?
Well, I got pitched through Art Horan as well, and Pam and Danielle about doing a story on the book on the Pitch to Kill that's on the story about Chapman dying from the Carl Mays pitch. And I said I'd like to do that story, but honestly, I want to do a deeper dive into Yankees, Indians, now Guardians, because truthfully, this is where this hatred started. It started from this pitch, and it's lived for 120 plus years, and it goes through Feller and DiMaggio, Feller's hatred in New York, the integrated Indians, the segregated Yankees in the 40s and 50s, goes later into the Steinbrenner, who was from Cleveland, who couldn't buy the Indians, and yada, 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 and here we are. So that's the impetus of the film, and that's why I did it. And I'm a lifelong Indians Guardians fan. I actually watch every 162 games, even throughout projects I do. And I bleed red and blue, and that's why. But I wanted to do it because there's a bigger story between Guardians and the Yankees than just the pitch. There's a lot more to it.
So you started the film with Bob DiBiasio, which, by the way, if he had a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week live video of him just chatting about Indian stories, I'd be tuned in. That guy is unbelievable. With his depth of knowledge. It's the behind the scenes stuff that gets you. And you put that right at the beginning of your film, talking about the crate. The crate that came from League Park, that went to Cleveland Municipal Stadium, that he was even unaware of when he joined the team at Municipal Stadium. Can you dive into that story at all?
Yep. The story goes like this. They had lost this plaque, and the plaque was honoring Ray Chapman, and they had not found it for many years. And when they moved, they obviously had probably moved, God knows what other materials, to the new stadium from Municipal to the Jake, now Progressive Field. And when they went through it to start untangling, whatever it is, they're trying to find things. In 2007, they were doing a clean out, and they happened to find the Ray Chapman plaque buried underneath crates and stuff. And it had been missing for over 60 years. Ironically, as I've done this, I will tell you, there's more stories like this more often than not. And what's remarkable is when it's found, it's like, how did this happen? We do this stuff, and it's amazing. But yes, it got misplaced, and it never got put up properly, and now it is. And I just hope a lot of people will know, when I was growing up in 43 years of life, I was taught a lot about 48 and 54 and Lou Boudreau and Rocky Colavito and Herb Score and all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
The Ray Chapman story is so important. It's such an important moment. And I hope people learn about 1920, because I never really knew a lot. And that's another reason why I wanted to do the film. The tragedy happened, but the Indians did win a World Series. And they beat out to get to the AL pennant Babe Ruth and the mighty White Sox. They were going through a huge scandal at that time. And it was an important pennant, and it won a World Series. And even though it was fought with tragedy with what happened, it was a big World Series moment. And technically, according to the rule books, even you can tell any annoying Yankee fan, yeah, you've won more rings. But guess who won the first ring? We did.
That's right.
So that always sticks out, and you want to stick in the craw of Yankees fans. You can point out bugs and all sorts of things, but who won the first? We did. And we beat you guys out. That means a lot.
And what I was curious on with the plaque is where did it hang at League Park? did it ever even hang at Cleveland Municipal Stadium?
It didn't.
Ever. If that was the original crate from when League Park closed.
I think what's mysterious is why it got misplaced, but maybe more importantly, why did it get forgotten? Well, tragedy, funeral. Yeah, I don't know, but it's just one of those things that just got misplaced. And thankfully, DiBiasio found it. It's a beautiful, huge plaque. It's not little. It's not like it's a postage stamp. It's like a huge, heavy statue. It's a big thing. It's a big plaque. It's a big thing. So I don't know. It's very strange, but thank God they found it. It's a beautiful piece of artwork, and Chapman should be remembered. And it's great that people leave things on graves and stuff like that, but it's nice to have something at the ballpark you can remember him by too.
Yeah. And you talk about Ray Chapman, and I think there's a lot of people who just know the tragic event, but they don't know much about Ray Chapman, the person, and even the player before that. You know, he was born and raised in Kentucky, worked in the coal mines briefly. I think he came in 1912 as a shortstop, and just 4 years later was one of the best in the game already. Can you kind of expand on just how much his popularity was growing just around the city and just around the game in general?
He was a hugely popular player. The best player was Speaker. The most popular player was Chapman. But it doesn't mean Chapman wasn't good. Chapman was an all-star. Chapman was, according to Bill James, and Bill James does these things for a living in baseball, he thinks it can be argued that Chapman should be in the Hall of Fame. So Chapman was a star. He married into royalty through Katie Daly, and Dalys were oil tycoons in the city of Cleveland at that time. So he was a mega star, and he was not just popular because of his play. He was very popular because Chapman was a very nice man who sang and danced. And that sounds funny today, but back in the 1920s, that was a big deal to people, that you could be able to play piano and sing songs and stuff. So Chapman was really a superstar player, and was really revered. And, you know, it'd be sad if he wasn't revered, but it made it worse. It made it harder because he was the most likable player on a very, very good team, and just made it very hard. He was clearly I would say, well, it's hard to argue. I guess Speaker would be the face. I'd say the blood and the heart that was Chapman. He's really the heart on the team. And it's just sad. It's just really, really sad because you can't find any findings of people who didn't like him. And it just makes it really, really hard.
And then you can go to the opposite, which was Carl Mays, the pitcher for the Yankees. You know, the complete opposite end. He was not liked necessarily by his teammates, but, you know, also other players around the league. He had that reputation of pitching inside.
Yes.
I actually found it interesting to learn that he was a submarine pitcher. And my first thoughts went to the submarine pitcher that we lost, which was Steve Olin.
Oh, yeah.
And he never had that reputation of pitching inside or anything like that. Steve Olin was a great guy. That's somebody I actually thought about too, as I was, you know, watching your film and learning about Carl Mays and, you know, the tragic event of him pitching inside to Ray Chapman and hitting him in the head, and eventually, you know, him passing away the next day. It was difficult to figure out that he took a little bit of ownership, but then it didn't seem very empathetic at all.
No, he was a true competitor. And Mays grew up in a different time. And I will say, in fairness to Mays, this was a guy, as Melanie pointed out, Kentucky, but was really from Missouri, as he would say Missouri, but Missouri. Mm-hmm. He grew up around a lot of people who died around him, which really wasn't unusual in the 1890s, early 1900s. So he grew up tough and rugged. And so because of that, even if he wasn't, he dealt with a lot of things that we would not deal with today on a normal basis. That was not the norm, but wasn't unusual. So because of that, he was highly competitive, and he grew up just differently. So because of his sociology and community, I think it's not crazy to hear what he says. But even still, you'd have to think he'd have a sympathetic heart. Or like, oh my God, because this is years later. Like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Guy was competitive until he died, clearly. And clearly, really, I mean, was he sorry he died? Of course. Did he mean to kill Ray Chapman? No. But I think the thing you can learn about that is that's why this film is, I would think, and I hope, it's a take a look back at time. Baseball in 1920 in the early 1900s was a very different game. It was played by outlaws, people that really weren't the safest of people. Ty Cobb was not a good dude. Definitely did not do good things, and
Definitely
you know
not.
that was kind of more the norm. It wasn't unusual, and ironically, when the Indians won, baseball changed in 21, and throughout the 20s, it became the long ball era and Babe Ruth. They became a lot more sophisticated. Baseball before then wasn't a sophisticated sport. They're kind of dangerous. They're kind of like, yeah, I don't know what's going on here. So that kind of plays into the character of Carl Mays and what happened here.
Yeah, and that World Series victory in 20, and I'm talking like, I was there, but, watching your film really brings the...
You weren't there?
No, unfortunately not. Maybe in another life. I definitely would have wanted to go if I was, in the area.
No, sure.
But that was so, I noticed in the film, Babe Ruth was out homering. Like you said, the game changed. He was out homering teams.
Oh my gosh, yeah, he almost had homer the Indians in that season too. It was just a different game. I mean, Chapman was more the game, and I have to apologize. I actually have to run after this question because I got something coming up right after this. But to bring it full circle, I thought it was ironic this year how the Guardians were the slap-happing, bunting team, and there's the Bronx Bombers still with Judge and Rizzo. It is kind of full circle to back in 1920. Chapman was a slap hitter, and Ruth forever changed the game. But that's just what the game was in 20. And I like how 100 years later, we have guys like, Gonzalez hitting blue singles to win games, and Quan. I just love Quan's game. And it reminds me a lot of Brett Butler for people to look at it. He played for the Indians. It was a great bunter.
Brett.
Oh my gosh, fantastic bunter. And it just brings appreciation back to the game. So yes, the game was very different. It changed forever after 20. But I think it's kind of cool how back in the 2022 series, it's kind of back to 1920. The big, powerful Bronx Bombers versus, the scrappy, slap-happing Guardians, then Indians. Yeah. It's kind of fun.
Absolutely. Well, Andy, I want to thank you again for joining us here tonight. Before you run, you want to plug some of your work or let people know where to find you?
War on the Diamond. Buy it on Amazon and Apple. If you like to, please buy it. waronthediamond.com for more information. And then I'm on all the time on Official Cleveland Sports on Instagram. 140,000 plus fans like myself. We talk after every Guardians game, Cavaliers, and yes, Browns. After every time, check me out on Official Cleveland Sports. And I cannot thank you guys for having me on enough. And again, War on the Diamond. I actually would love to come back on with you guys. This has been a lot of fun tonight. I can tell you guys are real fans.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Welcome anytime. This was a blast.
We appreciate it. And do you have any other projects that you're working on that we should look out for?
I'm doing some mob projects. I thought I'd go underground and, do some white envelope projects now, but doing some mafia projects and doing a history of basketball for the SEC. It's coming out that I'm not directing, but I'm producing. It's coming on ESPN. So everything from Pat Summitt, Don Staley, Donovan, Patino, Dale Brown, Nolan Richardson, all those kind of stories. Pistol Pete Maravich, all that stuff.
And look for you in the War on the Diamond as your cameo as an umpire as well, correct?
Well, look at you. Yes, that's right. That umpire is a bit of an asshole, but he took his cue well.
Very good. All right, Andy, we appreciate you being on tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I apologize. I just have to go do something at the moment. Melanie, and I forget your first name, brother. I'm so sorry. Danny, please have me back on. Jamie,
yep, sure.
I would love to come back on and talk Guardians with you guys as we get closer to season.
Absolutely.
We will do that.
Sounds
later, guys.
Take care.
Have a good night.
All right, Mel.
What a pleasure that was.
Yeah.
A trip down memory lane in this cold November evenings. We get to look back on Cleveland baseball.
It goes to show no matter
some not so great.
All right, Mel. So what your career path is, and his career path kept him tied into, what we love to talk about every week. even in our losses, right? We still love to talk baseball, Guardians, Cleveland sports. You can just feel that authentic enthusiasm from Andy. So I hope many go out, rent, buy War on the Diamond. I enjoyed it very much. And it's a great story it does have that tragic ending, but it's something that I think that as a Cleveland baseball fan, you need to know that story.
Yeah.
And you need to know the story of not just Ray Chapman, the player, but Ray Chapman, the man, the husband, and what would have been the father as well.
It's so tragic. Like, I just think of something like that today, and not to say if he was a bench player or not as good that it wouldn't have been as tragic, because it absolutely is tragic no matter what way you slice it. But just the facts Andy brings up of how different the game was back then. And it's just completely different now. I mean, granted, it was 102 years ago.
Yeah, and I think it said
crazy the history.
In the documentary, League Park only held like 9,000 people, I think.
Could you imagine that
big.
now?
Yeah, and you're like right on top of the field. There's no screens except for the screen they had in the short right field, which has been re-added to League Park now. And that's something I meant to ask him. I wanted to talk to him about the ticket booth that exists there. What's inside? Is there a museum? Like, I would die to go inside that and just stand there. I mean, you get to go to home plates in the exact same spot. So which means the pitching mound and then the right field. And I've been there. It's probably been 20 years now since I've been there. I was up in that area for work and I had the address and I'm like, I got to go past this. And to see the ticket booth sitting there, I was like, this is fantastic. And I got out of the car and I just kind of looked around League Park. And that was before they did all the changes and revamping and the field and stuff. And I would love to get up there now. If you have not been there, Mel, you really should go. It's just I want to go stand in the batter's box that Babe Ruth was in, right, or the right side where Ray Chapman was, and so many other greats.
Yeah,
so
that sounds like a blast. I love the history. I love the history of baseball. I agree with Andy 100%. It's far and away my favorite sport. Obviously, I do. I'm a Cavs fan. I'm a Browns fan. I will watch other sports. But baseball, it's always been baseball for me. Played softball my whole life. It was the first sport my dad introduced me to. May he rest in peace. I know he's looking down on this interview and smiling huge. He had encyclopedia type books on Cleveland baseball history. He would try and tell me as a kid, and he wanted me to know the history of the game. And it's so important to, see how it got to where it is today. Now we're talking about making room in parks for live sports betting, and Pete Rose got banned for that. Like, the way the game evolves, and not just baseball, but baseball especially, just the way the game evolves, that we're talking about the gambling and, the pitch clocks and the banning the shifts and all these things. It's just, baseball is such a timeless sport. It gets me giddy talking about it.
Wasn't it ironic he was talking about bringing gambling, to the game to compete with the other major sports?
Yeah.
And then we go back to the 20s and we're talking, even just before the 20s, you're talking about the Black Sox scandal and the gambling and stuff that was going on. And, and then you look at who's the hit king, Pete Rose, banned from baseball for gambling. Mm-hmm. And now gambling is becoming more fundamentally okay within the sport. Not necessarily in the clubhouse, right?
Right.
We know that.
Not Calvin Ridley style.
However, my opinion of Pete Rose is that the man should be in the Hall of Fame as a player, but then as a manager, that all records should be wiped out, because that's when he was gambling. But I think it would be great for the game of baseball to see Pete Rose go in the Hall of Fame before he passes away. That's just kind of where I stand on that one.
100%. I'm with you on that. But okay, we ran a little bit longer this week, but just such a fantastic interview. I could have talked to that guy for hours. I can't wait to have him on again. But Thank you all for listening again tonight. Make sure you're following BelievelandMediaLLC.com and following us on Twitter at mellow_NIE91. And James, what's your Twitter handle?
At the Fritz 330. Give us some feedback. Give us some comments. What did you like? What did you not like? What else do you want to hear? What other guests would you like? It's the off season. So we're working on some things behind the scenes. Andy was fantastic tonight, and so thankful to have this opportunity tonight. But let's do some more.
Yeah, definitely keep your eyes peeled. Like James said, we got some projects going on behind the scenes. Hopefully we'll have some announcements coming soon. But again, just trying to keep it fun and exciting in the off season. I know baseball's got a long off season through the cold, dark winter. But again, we do have the winter meetings kicking off Sunday. And it goes till next Wednesday. I believe that's the 7th. Expect some activity. I think when we come on the show next Wednesday, I think we're gonna have some things to talk about. Not quite
Sean Murphy.
I do think Sean Murphy may get moved at the winter meetings. But one promising thing I did want to touch on before we got out of here, James, just kind of bringing this right back up to the present day. I did read, I don't know if you had a chance to see it. I saw Paul Hoynes had an article where he confirmed that, the Guardians were in on Jose Abreu. They were fine with the 3-year deal. They just kind of shied away at the dollar amount, the annual value, which again, I'm not mad at them for that, but I do think this offseason, starting now, they need to go get their guy. I mean, we heard about Matt Olson, Jesse Winker last offseason, Jose Abreu now. You get to a point when you're only a few pieces away, you just got to go get your guy. You don't want to keep coming in second to everybody. And I do believe Chris Antonetti is executive of the year for a reason. I trust this front office with everything in me, and I know they have something else in the works. Again, we're not going to get the leaks, the exciting rumors from, all the MLB insiders. That's just not how this organization operates. And it's allowed them to have the success that they've been able to have. So again, we know they're a team who likes to make moves kind of closer to spring training. But we'll see what dominoes fall. Does Aaron Judge sign with the team next week? Does Jacob deGrom, maybe Justin Verlander to the Dodgers? We'll have to see. I think once some of these, higher tier free agents start falling, we're going to see the trade market start picking up a little bit too. But I think it's a 3-horse race for Sean Murphy. I think it's going to come down to the Guardians, the Rays, and the Cardinals. So he's the Guardians. I mean, the Guardians can have him if they want him. I just think they're going to have to accept coming off one of those top 3 pitching prospects, which I know they hate trading from their, prospect starting pitching, and rightfully so. We see what they turn out to be, but I just think Sean Murphy would be such a game changer in this lineup.
And I think Luke Maile, I think he jumped on with the Reds. Did I hear that correctly today?
Yeah, he did.
So, there's another catcher that's gone off our list, which we expected.
Best of luck to the mailman.
Yes.
I was at the 1-0 game against the Astros. It was on a Sunday, and the only run of the game was a Luke Maile solo home run. So we found out that the mail does get delivered on Sundays.
I like this. I like it.
All right, everybody. Thank you once again for listening. Like James said, give us feedback, shoot us some comments, what you thought about the interview tonight. Be on the lookout for announcements coming up regarding future episodes. And again, go to BelievelandMediaLLC.com for all your podcasts and written content at the professional, college, and high school levels. And again, let's hope we have some news to talk about next week. But in the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy, and go Guardians.
Go Guardians and go Cleveland.
Go Cavs, go Browns in the meantime, too.